What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the fifth album by singer Post Malone. Basically this product is called Austin and it came out in the summer of 2023. So the thing about this particular product here is Post Malone was going through a shift of changes as far as those pitches kind of particularly happened, but not just Post Malone but also music in general as far as the 2020s kind of particularly happened. Basically his previous album from 2022, which I gave a pretty rave and glitzy type score back in the summer of 2024, which was 12 Karat Toothache. That was kind of the last remnant of Post Malone from like his days like Beer Bongs and Bentleys and Hollywood's Bleeding, some of those type fairs just within the pitch behind it. Had that typical type fair, had some guests on there, pitches like that standard fair of sequels to songs like Wow and Goodbyes and like Psycho and songs like Rockstar and like Better Now and some of those type pitches. Just standard typical fair of just sequels to songs from the beefed up pitch of like Post Malone from like the late 2010s and early 2020s as far as those pitches can happen. But that was kind of a product, just the concept of like the shifting sounds. Basically hip hop was kind of in a different place between like 2022, 2023 pitches like that. There were some things that were happening in rap music, like Young Thug and Gunna went to prison, which kind of put a damper on trap music around that time. Like Drake, there was an increasing focus on like the big three of rap music with folks like Kendrick, J. Cole, and Drake, some of those type folks as far as those pitches kind of happened. Trap was just kind of melding through styles and it wasn't as predominant. Folks like Pooh Shiesty and Pop Smoke and Bobby Shmurda were kind of having prison problems, pitches like that just within the fair. So it's just kind of the concept as far as like the conduct of trying to find like the next big thing in rap music was just a different type pitch. But Post Malone shifted styles to like a different type style as far as those fairs going to happen. This particular album has that fair, but this is a classic here. I'm just going to go ahead and say I was not expecting it. As I initially listened to this project, I thought I was going to give it a lot lower a score. I was not. It just took a little bit. It was kind of, this is very much like a curveball type product that just kind of hits you out of nowhere as far as those pitches going to happen, at least if you don't see it coming. It's kind of within the concept. I mean, the tone behind just knowing that Post Malone covers a lot of styles is one thing to kind of have within that pitch, but this is not really a rap album. It has a little bit of like hip hop flavor to it with like some new wave in there, but in a lot of senses, this is kind of like a 2020s variation, like the simmering kind of alternative rock glaze like the late 90s with this like some heartland kind of bar hopping that you would get from folks like Bob Seger and people from like the 70s and the 80s. This really has that glimmer about it. It's really that smoky type stuff that you would feel like in like a standard kind of bar hop type haze of just cigarette smoke in the air and beer swilling, pitches like that, some of that type fare. Something that you'd expect from Kid Rock when you look on the album cover of Kid Rock from his Devil Without a Cause album. Just that depiction of that album cover is basically like the lifestyle of this particular album. Some good type pitch, just that heartland, just those heartland kind of cruise arounds just within the fair as far as that particular neon infested nightlife as far as this pitch can happen. It's pretty interesting type fair to kind of get that. This Post Malone taken to that particular style just works, fits like a glove as far as this pitch going to happen. There were some traces of acoustic kind of on the previous album, 12 Karat Toothache, but this one particularly melds that style and does it well. There are no guests on this particular album. For the most part, it doesn't seem like this is produced by hip-hop producers as far as those pitches can happen, but it looks within the aspect of just having some good jive about it with like the occasional bounce of like some, I mean, there is like some dance step in here. It does have some foot tappers within that sense. I do like the fact that Post Malone keeps it contemporary within the pitch, so this is not as much stretching type music as much. I mean, there is commerce on here, but it's just within the concept that has like the snap of just like you're going to go out to like standard pubs and dance hop type places, maybe mild raves, karaoke bars, some of those type pitches, grab a beer or two, just something within that relative pitch behind it. So this is a social type product, which is an excellent type aspect, just because I thought originally, just judging by the album cover, I thought this was going to be more personal bound, but this is pretty much in like a drunken stupor. I'm going to go ahead and say within the concept of this product, there's a lot of just particularly kind of after effects and dislikes, some kind of down on your luck kind of fatigue as far as those pitches kind of happen, this heartache as far as those pitches will kind of happen within that fair, just the concept of dislike, standard kind of bar hopping type malaise just within the pitch behind it. But it nails this particular style just within the pitch behind it. It really has that glimmer as far as those pitches going to happen. Good, excellent type conduct. Yeah, it's just within the pitch. But the unfortunate thing about this album is just the fact that these singles did not as full bound kind of connect. I think that was kind of the concept about it. Was just the curveball that Post Malone particularly threw off this product, considering that it was just a direct kind of 180 from the stuff that he was. There was no like real lead into this particular album as far as this pitch can happen. Just going from like the promotional fair of 12 Karat Toothache, which lasted about mid-late 2022, just going from the sort of stuff on this particular product, it was just kind of a 180 just in the pitch as far as that particular kind of went. Just right on the heels of it, just kind of getting the fair. I feel like this was kind of like, I want to say that Post Malone was still a pretty household name within these pitches, but it seemed like folks were kind of replacing him, at least in like the hip hop contemporary, with like Jack Harlow who eventually got replaced with Yeet and some of those type of folks. But it's just within the pitch that hit, I would say Post Malone crossed over to like alternative rock and kind of more heartland stretchers as far as those pitches kind of happen. But it's just within the tone that this just seemed like, I mean, it did have some commercial appeal, but not as much full bound. It didn't have Spotify songs with like a billion plays like he did with Beer Bongs and Bentleys and Hollywood's Bleeding and even 12 Karat Toothache, some of those type ones. So this is not a bad album. I feel like this is definitely a classic in my opinion within the taste behind it, but in terms of casual kind of consumption, it just has like a lighter shade of like quality in terms of like it's this full bound vastness compared to like what he was in like the mid 2010s and mid and late 2010s and early 2020s. So it's just within the pitch, but it works for what it is. This is an experimental type product, and in my opinion, it nails it. So yeah, just being able to say there were 4 singles out this product, and I recommend 3 out of 4 of them. So within the pitch behind it, these are nailed pretty within a pretty good finesse about it. So Chemical is the lead single. It's like a haphazard kind of typical Tuesday music, I had to say, within that fair. There's some Walmart commerce and like an Offset and kind of in the dumps type push about it. It has to say it's a pretty good bop to kind of get here. This is basically just like a song like Better Now from like Post Malone within that same standard type pitch. It's Walmart type fare, some of that type fare, just picking up like beers and snackage, Chex Mix, goodies, some of that type fare, just in the pitch behind a standard errand running, just Walmart, Target type commerce. I would say more so Walmart than Target, just a little bit more it's a little bit more suburban and just kind of more, a little bit more suburban and kind of more typical within the push behind it. But just the excellent type fare, just picking up some supplies and figure out what you're going to do for like a Thursday, Friday night. Figuring out what you're going to do for like a Thursday, Friday night when it's still Monday, Tuesday, just in the pitch behind it. Just some good type fare. Just it succeeds in being the typical type fare for like Post Malone, but it just does it within a different aspect. Just kind of basically just like a song like Better Now or like Psycho, one of those makeshift type push type songs, just a little bit more acoustic brush about it as far as those pitch can happen. But it is a nice one. Morning is the second single. This is another throwback one to previous Post Malone. I mean, I feel like the meld to some of this stuff, it does kind of have, like when I was saying before that this is kind of abrupt, the singles do at least kind of have like the melding of at least shifting you to like the new sound that kind of goes along with it. But it's just the concept that you're not getting like the Young Thug or Ty Dolla $ign folks like that, or 21 Savage, some of those type folks within the pitch, but still good tone for that. So Morning's like a throwback Malone and like a nice typical kind of hungover Saturday commerce, I'd have to say. It's kind of the concept like the morning moments of like 3:30, 4:35 a.m. on like a Saturday morning just after Friday night, some of that type pitch, just some woozy kind of Walmart days. I feel like hearing this has some pretty good thump about it. So there is another song like this on here, which is basically, if you do need more songs from like the previous era, if you do absolutely miss Post Malone from like the 2010s, I'd say another song that's just like Morning would be Texas Tea, but there's just not a good ton of this on this particular project. There's some new stuff on here, but it fits. I mean, I'll definitely describe some of these type tones as we get to it, that this Heartland kind of glazed and like this neon life that Post Malone gets to is a lot. It's pretty affable just in the sense that some of these, if you do miss 2010s Post Malone, it is on here, but this new style is pretty good as well. Just within the pitch. So Overdrive is the third single, and this is another nice one here. There's like a stretching kind of sunset gaze and like a typical kind of work shift evening relief. It's like some typical kind of work shift evening relief to kind of get here. Just head to like some good head to like a bar kind of on like some down on your luck kind of conduct as far as those pitch kind of happen with it. So a lot of the songs on this particular album are just within the same set mood of just kind of like the malaise and just the fatigue of like the Heartland type dredge as far as those pitch can happen with like the standard heartache as far as those pitch can happen with it. But Overdrive is like the single variation of that theme of that particular album. Chemical is kind of within that sense just a little bit more just gusty type commerce within the pitch behind it. But Overdrive is just like the more typical type fare of what you would listen. Overdrive is just a little bit more of like the stretching type fare of what you would get before heading to more songs like I would probably say like Buyer Beware and Something Real and some of those type of pitches, Green Thumb, Hold My Breath, some of those type of pitches that are just amongst like a standard night of just beer swing, some of that type of within the pitch behind. But Overdrive was a nice pitch for that, just kind of good concept. It just got done with work shift, good type fare of just standard relief of that. It's pretty much 5:36 p.m. just figuring out what's going to happen for like the rest of the evening as far as those fairs going to happen. And then Enough is Enough is the fourth single, and this is the only single out of these 4 that I don't recommend, just in the pitch. This one's just kind of some alternative rock, pretty similar to Overdrive, but just more peppy, just in the sense. I mean, there are some frivolity type songs on here. When I say that, most of this album's kind of in like a pretty dredgy and just kind of overall forlorn type mood. There are some songs on here that kind of have some differential type tones for that. And this is like to spice things up. This is like to have some extra type stuff on here, like Speedometer is an example one of those. I feel like Landmines is an example one of those, and Enough is an example one of those. Surprisingly enough, these are all three of the songs I don't recommend off this particular album. But yeah, to basically say about this album, I wound up recommending 15 out of 18 on here. So just in the pitch behind it, I am going to give this album like a 10 out of 10. I would have to say, just in the pitch. So talk about the three songs. Talk about the three songs I don't recommend on here, and this will just lead into Enough Is Enough. Just the pitch behind Enough Is Enough is just the concept that the pep behind this particular one. I feel like the theme of this particular product, just the malaise and just the heartland type glaze of this product, just fit a lot better just in the pitch behind it. But this is just more of one that just kind of felt like some relative, just kind of contemporariness about it that just was not quite as it just didn't have as much vividness in my opinion, I'd have to say. But to talk about the other two songs I don't recommend on here, Landmine and Speedometer are kind of the same way. Speedometer is kind of like one that kind of feels like a hop and bop type one, just a real kind of new wave type song, pretty much like a worse version, or very much the same sort of flavor as like a song like Too Cruel to Die, the same sort of vibe that Post Malone pulled off with like Circles off of Hollywood's Bleeding. It's the same sort of thing that Too Cruel to Die pulls off. Speedometer tries it. It's a little bit more of like a pep type tone. Too Cool to Die is like the same malaise and anguish that Post Malone is known for, but Speedometer just kind of tries it like a little bit of like, hey, I'm gonna have some fun. Just kind of this kind of forget about previous dredge, kind of forget about the standard grips of reality and just kind of get towards like some pitches of just like some frolics towards those pitches kind of having like a night type sense. But I don't know, just the pitch behind that particular song was just not as affable, full bound. I mean, I would have figured that a dance club type song, there's just some better moments that Post Malone had for some of that type pep. I definitely feel like some of these Heartland kind of acoustic songs on here, like Something Real and Something Real and Sign Me Up and Buyer Beware just nailed these particular vibes far better as far as those pitch kind of having just the tone behind. But Speedometer is just kind of like one for like a typical kind of more almost rap oriented type dance club within the pitch. There are some ones like that on here. I feel like Speedometer is one, Texas T is one, Morning is one, some of those type pitches, but Speedometer just didn't have as much compellingness with as far as those pitches going to happen. And then Landmine was just kind of like a more kind of just festive, kind of backyard festivity type fair, just within the pitch, like a more social commotion like some late summer kind of autumn type fare within the pitch, but it just didn't have as much full bound appeal in my opinion. But still, I'm going to give this album 10 out of 10 just to be able to say that many songs just hit the nail on the head as far as those pitches going to happen. To talk about some of these, like Texas T is another nice one. Like I was saying, this just like the song Morning. This is one of the more hip hop flavored ones. This is like a throwback to Beer Bongs Malone, I'd have to say. In songs like Wow, I would definitely feel like here has some heavy bass and knock about this particular one. This is kind of like a lone wolf bop to kind of get within that sense. This is good type of appeal. I mean, now that I think about it, 12 Karat Toothache kind of was light on songs like Wow and pitches like that, and Rockstar, some of those type tones as well. It seemed like Post Malone was kind of shifting away from just like the standard dance club type glitz. I mean, there's some moments on here like Speedometer that kind of have like that relative type bounce, but it's just kind of the aspect. It's kind of the vintage Post Malone's just on here in a smaller supply. A real nice one on here that has the appeal of just like the anguish of this product is Hold My Breath. It's like a tugging kind of drunken wind down after like a hammered night, I'd have to say here. Definitely some heartache vibe to kind of get within this particular pitch, and it's like a vintage kind of bar song to kind of get within that tone. It's something you expect from Kid Rock, Uncle Cracker, some of those type folks just with the pitch behind it. More folks from like the 70s, 80s, can't think it's full bound as many of them, but it's just typical kind of jukebox, it's typical kind of drunken jukebox type music kind of get within that pitch. Just standard bar hop karaoke bar type fares for those pitches kind of having some good type tones. Green Thumb is another one that's just like that, but this is kind of a little bit more backyard type fare. It's like a simmering kind of backyard smoke fest and bonfire comedy to kind of get within that pitch. This real country fried, something that Jason Aldean would do, Florida Georgia Line, some of those type folks I would say is like some outback kind of evening ambience kind of get here within that pitch. So this is good type fare for that. Real great tailgate type music just within the pitch behind it. Just good truck type music and standard fare. Not so much like loitering within the pitch of getting in trouble, but just within the pitch of places where you can tailgate some of that type fare, I'd say, within the pitch behind it. Another vintage Post Malone song on here is Too Cruel to Die. This is a real nice one to kind of get. It's like a nice new wave sequel to Circles, I feel like, from Hollywood's Bleeding. It's like some boiling commerce to definitely say, and it's like this definitely has some tugging appeal, definitely some good sunset gaze kind of heat to kind of get within that pitch. So just real Apple type one, very stylish just within the aspect behind it. There's real nice flavor to kind of get within this particular tone of it. Real nice flair. Nova Candy is a nice one as well. It's like a throwback kind of Malone hit to kind of get within that pitch. It's similar to like Better Now and Goodbye, some of those type pitches. Just some typical kind of overcast Walmart brush kind of get within that fare behind it. So pretty similar to Chemical. I feel like Nova Candy is just a little bit more in like the vintage kind of Post Malone type sense, just without the acoustic licks on there as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's a good nice one just for standard days like Beer Bongs and Bentleys and Hollywood's Bleeding. There are some real nice acoustic grooves on here that I really appreciate, and this is the real meat of this album as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just Post Malone trying out some new styles and pulling them off of the exacting nature as far as those pitches going to happen. One of which that kind of does that is Something Real. It's like a woozy kind of acoustic haze bounce kind of get within that pitch. Just some Heartland fog with like after hours motion about it, I had to say. Just some Neon Living's definitely about this song. It's a pretty hot one. Like I was saying, a real nice one that goes just great with Something Real and some of those type pitches. And songs like Overdrive would be Buyer Beware. It's like an offset and dismantled kind of two-step groove kind of get here. Definitely a tipsy, cut loose kind of song within that pitch behind it. It's like some vintage kind of Heartland bar smoke kind of get within that pitch behind it. Song is like some definite kind of vintage Heartland bar smoke kind of get within those pitches, and it's a pretty lit song overall, I'd say. So just some nice type fare, just that neon light, just pitches like that, just standard places where there's going to be cigarette smoke pitches like that, some of that type fare, just good after effect like that, just glaze of it, just standard niceness. And karaoke bars, places like that, jukebox type music like I was saying. And I don't know if I talked about Don't Understand, but this continues that particular pitch of some of these type ones. It's like a quality kind of continued spell of forlorn haze and like the weekdays after like a drunken weekend. I'd have to say about this one. It's a pretty good ponder kind of get here. So this is just kind of the pitch. This one goes pretty much better with Overdrive more so than songs like Buyer Beware and Something Real. Just kind of the pitch where I feel like those two songs, Buyer Beware, Buyer Beware. I feel like the songs Buyer Beware, Something Real are more just amidst like the venue pitches like that, places where the beers are going to be. I'd say a song like Don't Understand is kind of one just amongst like pretty much like the Tuesday after like a drunken weekend, something like that. Not quite the hungover Sunday, but not quite the glum kind of Monday after like going back to work, but probably like the Tuesday of just realizing that it's going to be a long week within some of those type pitches, I'd have to say, within the tone. This is not so much like a drunken type song, but just the after effect of just that continued forlorn kind of haze that you would have from like the pitch behind the past several while, just being within the forlornness, just within the fare behind it. So some good type pitches. Goes pretty well with Overdrive, I feel like, just within the concept. Whether Overdrive is like the song that you'd listen to on like whether Overdrive would be like the song that you'd listen to on like a typical kind of weekday makeshift, or whether or not it would be like a Thursday type song for that Overdrive would kind of be. But I feel like Overdrive is just an overall nice one to kind of have like some weekday kind of push as far as those pitches can happen. But I feel like Don't Understand is just kind of the after effect of like a long weekend, just the Monday, Tuesday after that spell as far as those pitches can happen. But some good type fare. And then I would also say that, let's say, Laugh It Off is a nice one as well. It's like a glazed and brooding kind of after hours bar hop flush kind of get within that pitch behind it. Just some swashed haze definitely. It's like a good late kind of Saturday nights type fare kind of get within that pitch. So Laugh It Off is another one just amongst like that pitch of like a glaze type weekend as far as those fares can happen. Laugh It Off goes great with Buyer Beware, Something Real, Overdrive, some of those type pitches like I was saying. Good type tone for that. Also songs like Hold My Breath, The Green Thumb within certain pitches, even though Green Thumb's more of like backyard outdoor type fare. If I look after it, I think the last one I haven't talked about on here is Socialize. So this is like a leftover kind of recovery tune from like Socialize, like a leftover kind of recovery tune from like some B-Leaguer type fare, I'd have to say. Just a swash kind of makeshift commute, I would definitely feel like hearing. It's just some grizzled haze kind of get within that tone. This is kind of the pitch after like kind of like a song that was just like the one I was saying, like kind of like a song like Don't Understand, but just a little bit later. Probably I'd have to say maybe if Don't Understand was like 2 or 3 days after the weekend of such a spell, I'd have to say that Socialite might be like a week or two later as far as those pitches can happen. Just the concept of just getting the liquor out of your system, just back on the makeshift type grind as far as those pitches can happen, just within the pitch behind it, just kind of more makeshift recovery from heartache as far as those pitches can happen, just within the aspect behind it. Just some good aspects just within the tone. It's really like the tone of some of these type of ones, but I do like the beleaguered aspect of about this particular album. Just has some good type pitches. I realize that Post Malone has made songs like this in the past with songs like Psycho and Goodbyes and some of those type pitches, but it's just within the tone that it just has like an extra kind of electricity this time, just within the pitch of just the aspect behind some of this glaze, just as far as like the seediness that kind of goes along with it this time, just more so than just like the club glitz of like before and dance hops of some of that previous type fare. It's just a little bit more seedy within the pitch. Just the neon glaze about it just really works. So just within the fare. I also don't think I've talked about the song Joy. This is like a gusty commerce of a song kind of get here. It's like a nice vibe spot. It's like some nice vibe out kind of spice kind of get within that pitch. Just looming vocals, I'd have to say, and it's like a ghastly tint about this particular song. Pretty similar to Goodbyes, I'd have to say, and it's like a glum kind of joyride to kind of get within that pitch behind it. So yeah, just very ghastly. I feel like Goodbyes from Hollywood's Bleeding was a pretty haunting song just within the pitch. This kind of has that particular fare, just the the looming kind of ness of songs like Circles and Goodbye, some of those type pitches from Hollywood's Bleeding just within the fair, just kind of, this would just be some nice autumn brushes within the pitch behind the same sort of particular smoky type tenor songs from like Hollywood's Bleeding, some of that type pitch behind. Not quite as much Summer Frolic, some of that type fair, but just the concept of more crisper, cooler type weather within the pitch behind it. It's really like the ghastliness of this particular one. It's really not that much of like a ghostly type product, but then in the same pitch behind it, it does kind of have like some of that looming type appeal just within like a more kind of this is a crisp type project. It has to say about this really crisp type appeal, just like that kind of this more neon fog within the pitch behind it, but that's kind of the aspect behind it. I actually don't think I talked about, there might be one more song I haven't talked about on here. I don't think I talked about Sign Me Up either. It's like a simmering kind of out in the evening glaze kind of alternative rock kind of dance heat to kind of get within those pitches. I'd have to say just some smoky unwind from work as far as those fairs can happen with it. Sign Me Up is another nice one that goes great with like the neon haze and most of this particular album, like Buyer Beware, Something Real, and Overdrive, some of those type pitches. I mean, most of this album has that particular glaze about it that just works excellently, so it's just in the pitch. But Sign Me Up's a nice one with like some good kind of dance groove about it. So it's just in the pitch having some of that contemporary typeness, I'd have to say. Good type fair. So yeah, this album gets a 10 out of 10, I'd have to say here, being able to say within the aspect behind it. The social score I'll probably give, like, that's kind of a relatively tricky type fair as far as those pitches can happen. I'll probably give the social score like a 9.75 because just within the pitch behind it, the excellence is on here as far as that particular is displayed. This is kind of the concept. This is kind of the concept that I just feel like the reception is not as full bound. I mean, Post Malone was always someone that could get to the billions. He has multiple songs that went diamond from like the RIAA, some of those type pitches, diamond selling singles, billions of plays on Spotify. He's a pretty household name within the pitch, especially amongst contemporary times. But this is kind of the pitch that this just feels kind of like an afterthought compared to most of his blistering popularity that he had with his previous albums and his mixtapes as far as those pitches can happen. This feels like maybe he was kind of starting to get bastardized a bit. I mean, obviously his popularity being slighted is still more than most folks around that particular time. But just within the pitch, it just doesn't feel as ubiquitous as he was in 2020 or 2017, some of those type pitches within the fair, but it's still good within the pitch. I feel like the singles are great. The execution of this product is really supreme on this product. Just the way he delivers on here is just excellent type fair. The smokiness, the style, the aspect, the social value of this particular product, just the aspect of what it kind of goes with, just within the tones of how it nails the particular fairs of it is just pretty, just it hits. So it's just kind of the concept, but this doesn't feel as normally en masse as it did before. But in terms of future, like Post Malone did drop an album in the summer of 2024 within the pitch behind. I'm going to get to that one down the road as far as those fairs can happen. That's the last one left to kind of get to, and then we'll be caught up with Post Malone just within the pitch. But I'd have to wonder, I just question what that particular album's going to go to, because I feel like this album switched to like alternative kind of acoustic rock, and I think that like his 2024 album switched to more country type haze. So it's just interesting to see what the transformation melded into from that particular point. But we'll have to get to that. But yeah, I basically gave 12 Karat Toothache over a 9 out of 10 from what I remember last year. Gave this album a 10 out of 10. Some excellent type fair. When I was thinking that music from like past 2020s or so is not as, when I was thinking that music from past the 2020s or so is not quite as excellent, that's definitely not as true, because there's definitely some good pitches on here, at least in Post Malone sense, I'd have to say. So some excellent type fair to be able to get this kind of an overlooked type highlight within a relative type sense. Definite classic here, easy enough one to recommend. This continues the trend of just the music being thrown in 2023 within relative type pitch. This is a good example of when it is.